One American submarine class carries enough combined nuclear firepower to end civilization several times over. And it does so while remaining so silent that Soviet and Russian sonar operators have spent decades failing to reliably track it, even when they knew roughly where to look. But the story of how America achieved that silence began with a submarine so dangerously experimental that its own reactor design nearly ended the entire nuclear submarine program before it started. That vessel is on this list, and exactly what went wrong beneath the waves during its classified sea trials is something we will reveal at the end of this video. This is the complete story of every major submarine class the United States Navy has ever built. From primitive gasoline-powered coffins that killed more of their own crews than the enemy, to the silent nuclear leviathans patrolling the ocean depths today. USS Holland, SS-1, the Navy's first commissioned submarine in 1900, ran on a gasoline engine while submerged, holding its breath on stored compressed air. A combination so volatile that fumes pooling inside the hull posed a constant risk of explosion, and early crews described serving aboard her as more terrifying than any surface vessel duty in the fleet. A-class and B-class submarines. These primitive early boats suffered from chronic gasoline vapor buildup, and multiple vessels experienced onboard explosions during training exercises. Deaths that were quietly absorbed into peacetime naval statistics as the Navy desperately worked to understand a technology still in its infancy. K-class submarines. Deployed during the First World War, the K-class introduced diesel-electric propulsion, finally eliminating the deadly gasoline fumes. But their primitive batteries gave off chlorine gas if seawater breached the hull, a slow chemical death that terrified crews far more than depth charges. S-class submarines. The interwar workhorse of the fleet, S-class boats suffered a stunning number of peacetime disasters, including the loss of USS S-4 after a collision with a Coast Guard cutter in 1927. Its trapped crew signaling desperate messages by tapping on the hull for 6 days before the last survivor died, waiting for a rescue that never came in time. Gato class. Entering service just before Pearl Harbor, the Gato class became the backbone of America's devastating submarine campaign against Japanese shipping, ultimately helping strangle the island nation's entire wartime supply chain and sinking more enemy tonnage than any other class in naval history. Balao class, an improved Gato design with a thicker pressure hull, allowing significantly deeper dives. The Balao class proved so effective that several boats remained in active service for decades after the war, including some that were still operational during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Tench class, the final major diesel-electric class built during the war. The Tench class arrived too late to see extensive combat, but represented the absolute pinnacle of conventional submarine design before nuclear propulsion made every diesel boat instantly obsolete. USS Nautilus, SSN 571, the world's first nuclear-powered submarine, commissioned in 1954. Nautilus could remain submerged for weeks at a time, a capability so revolutionary that it sailed beneath the Arctic ice cap and crossed the North Pole entirely underwater in 1958, a feat previously considered fantasy. USS Seawolf, SSN 575. This is the submarine from the Hook, built with an experimental liquid sodium-cooled reactor rather than the pressurized water design used in Nautilus. Seawolf's reactor developed dangerous coolant leaks that forced the Navy to abandon the entire sodium-cooled concept and replace the reactor entirely, a costly and classified engineering retreat that nearly derailed confidence in nuclear submarine propulsion before it had truly begun. Skate class, the first production-run nuclear submarine class. Skate-class boats refined lessons learned from Nautilus and Seawolf into a reliable pressurized water reactor design that would become the template for virtually every American nuclear submarine built afterward. George Washington class, America's first ballistic missile submarine. The George Washington class carried Polaris nuclear missiles capable of striking Soviet cities from hidden positions beneath the ocean, transforming submarines from a tactical naval weapon into the most survivable leg of America's entire nuclear deterrent triad, Permit class, designed for deep, silent hunting of Soviet submarines. The Permit class introduced a teardrop-shaped hull, optimized purely for underwater speed and stealth, rather than surface performance. A design philosophy that would define every American attack submarine built since. Sturgeon class, the workhorse attack submarine of the Cold War. Sturgeon-class boats conducted extraordinarily dangerous intelligence-gathering missions deep inside Soviet territorial waters. Operations so classified that many remain only partially declassified even today. Decades after the Cold War ended, USS Thresher, SSN 593 disaster. The lead boat of her own class, Thresher was lost with all 129 crew members during a deep diving test in 1963 when a piping joint failure triggered a chain reaction of flooding and reactor shutdown, a catastrophe that fundamentally rewrote American submarine safety protocols and led directly to the creation of the SubSafe certification program still used today. Los Angeles class. Built in numbers exceeding 60 boats, the Los Angeles class became the most numerous nuclear submarine class in American history, forming the backbone of the attack submarine fleet throughout the final decades of the Cold War and well into the War on Terror. Ohio class. This is the submarine class referenced at the very beginning of this video. Each Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine carries enough Trident nuclear warheads to constitute a devastating second strike force entirely on its own. And their extraordinary quieting technology, refined across decades following a scandal in which Soviet agents illegally purchased sensitive American propeller milling equipment through a Japanese company, makes them exceptionally difficult for any adversary to track even today. Seawolf class. Modern, named in honor of the earlier experimental boat. The modern Seawolf class was designed as the ultimate Cold War attack submarine, but the program was drastically cut short when the Soviet Union collapsed, leaving only 3 of the extraordinarily expensive and capable vessels ever built. Virginia class, the current backbone of American attack submarine construction. The Virginia class was specifically designed to be more affordable than the canceled Seawolf program, while incorporating modular technology insertion, allowing new capabilities to be added to the design without requiring an entirely new class of submarine to be developed from scratch. Columbia class, the next generation of American ballistic missile submarines currently under construction. The Columbia class represents one of the most expensive naval procurement programs in American history, designed to quietly patrol the oceans for decades into the middle of this century as the newest guarantor of America's nuclear deterrent, from gasoline-powered coffins that terrified their own crews more than any enemy, through the harrowing tragedy of Thresher that rewrote the rules of underwater safety, to the nearly undetectable Ohio-class boats patrolling the oceans today. The history of the American submarine fleet is a story told mostly in silence and secrecy. Unlike aircraft carriers or tanks that fight in full view of the world, most of what these vessels have actually accomplished, the missions completed, the intelligence gathered, and the wars quietly deterred simply by existing somewhere beneath the waves, remains classified, hidden in a domain of the ocean depths that few will ever fully understand.